where we are into the value chain is finding the right people, researching them, generating the best message, and getting them on a book call. When we talk about that, it's a very direct causal line to investing in Valley and seeing additional book meetings. That's ultimately what we're selling, is how can we go get booked meetings on the calendar. And that's really what I define as like level 3 value. I think if you think about AI SDRs, AI sales tech in general, you got this level 1 value, which is finding the right customers, it's researching them, it's generating great messaging. Then of level 2 value, which is generating higher response rates than what you're currently doing. And level 3 is ultimately the booked meeting. And so the biggest change that you see in this post-AI world is that all the software pre-AI could only offer level 1 and level 2 value, and then humans had to step in to go and offer level 3. Now you can say, look, we've unlocked level 3 value.
Zayd, how are we?
Good, man. Good. Excited to chat. Appreciate you having me on.
Of course, man. I've been doing research on you for the past day and a half, past 36 hours, and I took this little excerpt from your website, and I'd love if you can kind of expand on it, because I think it gives a really, or it will give a really good encapsulation of what you guys do and how it works. So, took this from your website. 98% of your website visitors never take a step but know about you. Valley uncovers them and enables end-to-end outbound automation to those people. This has never been possible before. Tell me more about this.
Yeah, man. So I think high level, when you think about B2B growth, you know, sort of really two channels. You've got inbound, you've got outbound. Inbound, you've got awareness, you've got marketing, you've got brands, you've got people coming to your site. And then outbound historically has been sort of these cold lists of people that you'll throw into a tool. You'll send LinkedIn messages, you'll send emails, maybe you'll do some text messaging and calling, but like high level, that's outbound and inbound. Now, what we found really interesting was that with inbound, it's maybe 2% of people who view your site will actually submit a demo request. But what happens to the 98%, right? You've paid for all of those people in some form or another through either your time in writing content or the blogs you're publishing for SEO or ads that are bringing people to your landing page. But you can't identify them. And so the best in class technology out there to try to help you with this sort of website traffic that you're already generating and capturing sort of some value from that are things like 6 Sense or some of these website intent tools that can tell you the companies that view your site. And we really found that to be, I think, marginally interesting, but really inactionable, right? What are you supposed to do with that? You've got sort of somebody from Google in Austin, Texas has viewed your website. Like, congratulations, there's now 2,000 people that you need to go and reach out to. And so what we decided to try to figure out is like, how can you go down to the individual person, the person's name, their profile, the email, the specific individual that's showing intent that's actually on your website, who's aware of you, and how can we then outbound to that person? And inherently, since they already know who you are, they should be the most responsive, the most receptive, and have the highest probability of booking a demo. So piece one was saying, okay, let's go and figure out this website intent piece, which actually was the last thing that we built. But that's really step one of how you can build a list inside of Valley. If you want to do the traditional cold outreach, upload list from Sales Navigator or CSV, you can totally do that as well. But really the special sauce there is let's go build a list of those people. From there, and there was some tech that existed to do that sort of independently and as a silo. We said, well, the whole point of building this list is to actually outbound to them. And so let's build the ability to, number one, research them deeply, generate hyper-personalized and well-researched messages to them, and then automate those messages out to them on the best performing outbound channel in the world, which is LinkedIn. So we built the ability to sequence via connection requests and follow-ups, and then in-mails as well. So all in all, you have this hyper-performance outbound flow, which is uncover the people who know who you are, do an unbelievable amount of research on them, sort of what a top 1% SDR would do if they had unlimited time in their day. Look at their posts, look at them on the individual level, their entire digital presence, look at them on the company level, what's happening to their company or their recent news, press releases, fundraising, and then on a macro level, what's happening in the industry, right? What do we think is top of mind for them? Build those 3 levels of intelligence, summarize it all, and then couple that with mine or Liam's writing style to generate hyper-personalized messages in a matter of minutes out to those people. So yeah, high level, that's what I mean by that sentence and sort of what we've been building here for the past year and a half or so.
Amazing. Can we break that down even further, right? So I've seen on your kind of website, the steps you've got listed as arrival identification, research, craft messaging, engage, call scheduled. Let's start at arrival and identification. Someone lands on your website. How exactly are you extracting that information to understand who the fuck they are?
Yeah. So we'll see how much I can say and how much I can't. The generally the like what I'll say to that question is, it's funny because it's really just a string of a bunch of sort of different technology providers. Ultimately, this tech to identify the people on your site has existed in the e-commerce landscape for damn near a decade, right? But the issue is that when you identify somebody's email or the emails of the people who are viewing your site, don't book a demo, on the e-commerce side, they were able to give you their personal email, right? And for e-com, that's great because you want to be dripping on people who like abandoned cart, for example, with their personal. You don't need their business email. So this tech existed in that form. Now, what we figured out at Valley was saying, okay, let's go and work with some of these data providers that are able to find a personal email. But let's point this to the B2B space. And so let's build an enrichment flow that can go from personal email to business email and business email to LinkedIn profile. And then once you have the LinkedIn profile, you essentially have that fingerprint, right? You know who the person is, where they're from, the companies they've worked for. You could use that to then further enrich with things like People Data Labs, Mixrank, Prospeo, and gather sort of mounds of data on them. From there, go do some agentic web scraping, and then sort of proceed with the rest of the flow. But that was really the core insight. How do we take this sort of dust off this technology that's existed in e-com for quite some time and point it to the B2B world?
Got you. And that really gets us from the arrival identification research. And we're kind of now at this craft messaging point. I don't think it's how exactly do you ensure someone's voice is kind of kept the same? How do you influence that in the messaging and then the engage part of it, the call scheduled as well? How exactly does that work? That connect to my email provider, like talking through?
Yeah, 100%. So there's actually a lot of sort of method to the madness here. If you think about sort of the chronology of people working with AI text generators, we started off with sort of just plain sort of chat GPT outputs. Everybody started playing with this thing, and it spits out messaging. Now it's really good at sort of answering questions, but you could tell like we've got this sort of uncanny valley moment where you can tell if these things are it sounds AI generated. And so from there, people then moved into, okay, how do we build some gears and levers to say, hey, LLM, I want this output to be formal. I want it to be funny. I want it to be casual. And that's what I see sort of with a lot of different text generation tools is you can select from these preformed buckets. But for us, we still found that as not malleable enough. And so there's sort of this third phase, which is what Valley does today, which is how can we mimic the human that Valley is representing to the highest fidelity possible. And the way that we do that is through uploads and custom instructions. So two vectors or two inputs. The first piece is going to be uploading content. And so you can upload anything that is emblematic or indicative of how you write. So this could be previous LinkedIn posts. This could be emails. This could be, for example, for me, I've uploaded my newsletter into Valley. Um, as much information as you can. Just give Valley examples. And then you're prompted with piece two, which is slightly more granular, and it's custom instructions. Similar to if I hired a new college grad and I wanted to jot down notes on how I write and hand it to them, I kind of work with Valley in the same exact way. I give it do's and I give it don'ts. One of my do's is sporadically introduce things like LMK or stoked or grateful, like common words that I'll use because I take a casual approach to my outreach. Um, use CTAs like would love to chat or LMK if you want a one pager. What we find is like giving Valley specific words or phrases is fantastic. Telling it to use lowercase letters instead of uppercase letters, really anything that again is indicative of how I write. And then don'ts. Never use jargon, never use buzzwords, never sound like an SDR, never sound like a sales rep. You should sound like somebody messaging a friend that they've known for 3 weeks. So not super casual, but also not super formal. From there, Valley takes those two inputs and we then feed that to an engine that can say, okay, with all of this information, let me build a structured output of how this person writes from sentence and organization and flow, from use of colloquialisms, idioms, and slang, um, overall formality level, and then about sort of 20 different categories. And then when Dali generates messaging, it's always looking at what it created for itself as like this style guide. as a reference for how this output should be presented. So that's when it comes to the writing style piece. When it comes to actually generating the messaging, this is where I think there is a pretty large misconception where people are saying, look, LLMs can't generate sales messaging. It sounds really weird. It doesn't have the same intuition as what a human would have. And so what we thought was, if you are trying to generate a sales message with a single prompt and then just like a big lump of information on the prospect, it is going to sound like crap. It's going to sound really weird. But if you force an LLM to think like how a top 1% SDR would think, then what does the output look like? And so with Valley, we've got this sort of 13-step flow where we are going through and saying, okay, we'll summarize the prospects. Now let's think about what KPIs matter to this prospect in their daily life. Because a top 1% seller is thinking to themselves, how can I get my prospect promoted, right? How can we win together? How can I position my product in that way? So we force Valley to think like that for every prospect. What KPIs matter? Okay, KPI 1 matters, KPI 2 matters, KPI 3. Based on those KPIs, what is my prospect probably thinking about day in, day out, right? What thoughts are sort of running through their mind? Well, they're thinking, well, how can I generate more pipeline in this industry? How can I compete with this Series B funded company when we have 80% of the funding, X, Y, and Z? From there, based on those thoughts, can we extract problems that they're likely facing? And based on those problems, how can Valley be positioned in a way that can help solve those problems? Now, once you have that, that's now a chain of like 4 or 5 prompts. You've got this core, really interesting insight of how your product can directly support in solving a prospect's problem. Couple that with the prospect summary and couple that with a bunch of other inputs that we were able to grab on that person, the writing style, etc. And then you can generate your final messaging sequence. Now I'm skipping over a couple steps because obviously we don't want to give away exactly how we're generating the messaging, but ultimately it's about 13 different steps that we'll employ to get to a message that sounds like you, that directly addresses a pain that we have a sort of high degree of certainty that the prospect is facing, and positions the product that we're selling in a way that that can solve that problem. So hopefully that gives some insight on sort of the writing style, and then this how do you actually generate sales messages.
What was the first version of Valley, and how did you get to where it currently is? Because it sounds like you've just used first principle thinking to the nth degree and just asked the question, what if, what if, what if, what if? And I'm just wondering like what the very first version of this looked like that you put live.
Oh man, it was very bad. It was very, very bad. Um, so it's funny, like we to kind of prove out the MVP, we knew when we started, like we were working with models GPT-3, GPT 3.5. So there, it was like worlds worse than what we're dealing with now. So anyways, the first version was like a very simple front end dashboard. My background is in sort of LinkedIn appointment setting. Previously, uh, founded two and exited two appointment setting agencies. And we'd use tools like Zopto and Expandy and like some of these basic LinkedIn automation tools. So my heuristic going into it was saying, how can I build the most basic version or replicant of Zopto, for example, with AI messaging instead of templated messaging? And there was a single prompt, like exactly what I said you don't want to do. Now is what we did. And so it was a single prompt to try to generate messages. There was no sort of ability to mold the tone. We would have customers sort of fill in this Google sheet of like, what are you selling? What are the value propositions, the proof points, the pain points? We would then take that Google sheet and throw it into a prompt and then try to generate messaging for these prospects. And the research that we had on the prospects was solely LinkedIn data. We had no other data sources. So if somebody didn't have a good LinkedIn profile, the messaging was terrible. And then from there, I had a team of sort of my CX team at that time. I asked them to do the very laborious task of reviewing all of the messaging, making sure it didn't hallucinate, making sure it made sense before we hit approve and actually showed it to the customer on the front end of our dashboard. So it was actually a very sort of it was very rubber bands and duct tape way of saying, look, we know the tech will eventually get there, but right now it really is sort of AI plus humans to see if we get a good output. And then as we progress in product dev, it's okay, we have prioritized our roadmap such that we're looking at what humans are doing and saying that's going to be the next thing that we try to solve with technology. Once we do that, we then look at what the humans are doing next, until humans are sort of way at the edges of sort of the delivery chain of how to get a great message out the door. And now they're pretty much non-existent in our messaging process. So, yeah, really basic, but a a lot of iteration. I think you touched on something. It's 100% first principles. Like that's anything that I'll try to put forward. For me, I have to think through logically, like what are the immutable truths, the things that nobody can disagree with, pure facts, and then get to a succinct conclusion from there. And that's really been what the processes look like thus far.
I love it. What is your ICP now? Like, what companies do you work with most often? And is that different from what you initially thought when you were kind of producing that MVP? The world is changing fast. AI is transforming industries, and those who don't adapt will get left behind. If you're not actively learning AI, you're already falling behind your competition. But here's the good news. You don't have to do it alone. When you join the AI Report free community, you'll get immediate access to powerful AI resources that will help you stay ahead. First, you'll receive the first 5 issues of our pro newsletter packed with AI insights trusted by over 400,000 professionals at Google, Microsoft, and OpenAI. You'll also get 3 exclusive AI guides from HubSpot designed to help you work smarter and integrate AI into your daily workflow. This includes a complete guide to using ChatGPT at work so you can start impressing your coworkers immediately. Secondly, 200 AI-powered income ideas to help you discover actionable ways to turn AI into a money-making machine. And lastly, 1,000 marketing and productivity prompts. To make sure you start strong, we're including a beginner-friendly AI course that will get you up to speed in under 10 minutes, led by our very own creative director, Arturo Ferreira. Finally, you'll be part of a thriving network of AI-driven professionals. The total value of everything inside is over $549, and today you can get it all for free. Join today and start learning AI instantly.
It's interesting because in my prior 2 agencies, we were very vertical. And so we worked with first one was financial advisors and the second was capital raisers, so emerging funds that were looking to raise from LPs. With Valley, the ICP has pretty much stayed the same because it's such a horizontal product, and it's sort of a blessing and a curse. Um, because you think about the proposition that we're offering is book sales calls that to sort of your financial advisor. It's applicable to Salesforce. So everybody wants that, and so we really have to think about one, what value will the customer pay for? We know people will pay for booked meetings, but two, what value could we provide predictably and repeatably? Um, and where do sort of 1 and 2 line up? And so majority of our customers are sort of these early stage companies post their first round of funding, whether it's like a friends and family round, an angel round, a seed round. But they've got something that has a semblance of product market fit. Because we earlier in our sort of gestation, we had a number of companies who were founded by technical founders, brilliant minds, but they had no idea people wanted what they were building, and they saw Valley as the silver bullet to just say, I don't want to learn sales. Valley will go do the sales for me. And that was just an insane churn loop because obviously the problem of booking sales calls was most intense for them, but we could not predictably and repeatedly provide that for them. So we moved slightly up market to these seed and sort of pre-seed, post or early funding companies. Then we also are working with in pilots with a number of companies that are $10 billion plus enterprises, which we can't disclose any names right now, but exploring what that looks like to actually find ourselves in those orgs. And that's ultimately where we want to go because that's where obviously all the budget is. Everybody in B2B SaaS that's selling, let's say, a 10K ACD or more, if they're Series V plus, they've got massive SDR teams. And so obviously a very acute pain if you can reduce your cost per appointments. It's a massive line item that we can support with. So we want to get there. However, one thing I find really interesting is that everybody in our space is also going through this same journey up market. Because naturally with a startup, you find one point of the value chain where you can be 10x better than anything that existed before. You have to either 10x better or 10x cheaper, ideally both. So everybody in this AI sales space found their own sort of wedge into how can we do one part of this process 10x better. And now it's a race to saying we found this core nucleus. Now we need to build all the scaffolding around it to sell into these mid-market plus companies, right? Salesforce integrations, SSO, sort of Okta compatibility, sort of enterprise level permissionings and roles, workspaces. Like you don't start with any of that. You start with the 10x improvement. But now you have to race to go do all that stuff so you can actually sell into those accounts. So, anyways, long story short, right now our ICP are going to be those sort of early stage companies, and we're working our way up market as we start to build more of the scaffolding around this core 10x better nucleus that we've created.
Who's a terrible fit for your company? Who's a terrible fit for someone to work with you? Who would you turn away at the door?
Yeah, I would say there's 3. One, I don't know why, a lot of B2C companies. And it's like, dude, we are not going to be your best bet. Your customers will have like a, will have a, I don't know, you're looking for free customers and maybe they're paying $8 a month. Um, you don't, one, you don't want to take sales calls with those people because that just doesn't scale. Uh, and two, you're just going to be burning money with us. Like, don't do that. Go away. Or thank you for coming, but like we can't service you. So I think B2C companies, companies that are sort of woefully pre-product market fit, they haven't really talked to any customers and done any sales calls. They don't know if anybody in the world wants what they think the world wants. Um, and then companies that have, let's say, are selling into 200 target accounts or selling into the sort of the Fortune 100, right? At that point, the marginal additional cost that you're going to spend for a human to spend time researching and writing and building a relationship and building rapport, it is totally worth it. There's no need for you to outsource to a software or to an agency or a group of people, because ultimately, if you win one of those accounts, you're looking at $1 million plus ACVs. Invest in that, right? Humans are fantastic. We're unique. We're special for a reason. Get humans on those accounts. Um, so that's what I would say. So one end of the spectrum over here, the other over here, and then like B2C over there for some reason. Yeah, those would be our worst customers.
What's the real difference that you're trying to make for organizations? Is it just a matter of revenue? Is it a matter of like talk time on sales calls? How do you really sell value when you're on a sales call with someone?
So ultimately, like everybody just wants pipeline, right? Everybody wants revenue. For us, the biggest selling point is like, look, where we are in sort of the value chain is finding the right people, researching them, generating the best message, and getting them on a book call. So when we talk about that, it's a very direct causal line to investing in value and seeing additional book meetings. From there, it's passed on to the sales team. We can't say we're going to generate this much revenue for you. We can project based on sort of your current ACV and historical close rates from your sales team. But that's ultimately what we're selling, is how can we go get booked meetings on the calendar. And that's really what I define as like level 3 value. I think if you think about AI SDRs, really sort of AI sales tech in general, you got this level 1 value, which is finding the right customers. It's researching them. It's generating great messaging. Then of level 2 value, which is generating higher response rates than what you're currently doing, because that again has sort of a downstream effect. And level 3 is ultimately the booked meeting. And so um, the biggest change that you see in this post AI world is that all the software pre AI could only offer level 1 and level 2 value, and then humans had to step in to go and offer level 3. Now you can say, look, we've unlocked level 3 value with software. Anyways, yeah, that's what I think we are where we're positioned, and then ultimately there's a lot more that we want to do around um, solving that problem, because I think that a lot of companies have gone around this in a I don't want to say wrong way, but it's like in a non-durable way, which I'm happy to expand on more if you think that would be useful.
Expand on non-durable.
Yeah. So a lot of AI sales tools, um, I'll specify AI SDRs here. I think they're trying to solve problems in a process that no longer exists or no longer works, right? So if you think about the past 10 years of sort of spray and pray outreach, you'd use a filter based list to build those massive list of contacts. You would have a templated message that you'd send out to those people. And ideally, you get a booked meeting on the back of that. Now, when outreach first came onto the scene, 2013, 2014, um, you're able to see 20% response rates plus pretty easily, right? It didn't take rocket science. And you could say, great, if we send 1,000 messages, we book 10 meetings, let's go ramp that up to 100,000 messages. And that's how all of these sort of Snowflake, Salesforce, a lot of these sort of traditional outbound led organizations grew. When you're thinking about the first sort of iteration of AI SDRs, they said, cool, we can now go solve a lot of problems in that process. You don't need to do a filter based list. You can just type a query and we'll go build that list. You don't need to upload a templated message. We'll generate those templates to be personalized lightly. And we'll send out the masses of message for you automatically. But the problem is that sort of what coincided with AI coming to the fold in sales was also the spray and pray approach not working, right? Response rates atrophying every year. And now you struggle to see even 1%. It takes like a wizard to get 1-2% on email. Um, so you can solve problems and you can remove friction from that process all day long. But if the foundational process doesn't work anymore, you're not going to see any improved results. And so that's where I see a lot of the AI SDR world and why I think it's not going to be durable if you take that path. What we've really tried to think about is, what does the new process look like to generate pipeline? What are the world's best SDRs, humans, doing right now to generate pipe? And then how do you solve problems in that process? How do you remove friction from that process? And so I think it's two pieces. It's like one, people want autonomous pipeline. And two, people want signals. They want intent. They want to know, okay, how do we target the right person at the right time, the right message? So at Valley, we're thinking about how can we couple the two, right? How can we go and find the right intent signals, the right buying signals, and capture people who are already exploring something that you offer, and from there, running that AI SDR playbook on research, sending messages, etc. And ultimately, we want to be the outbound tool to send fewer messages because we've done such an incredible job at the top of the funnel, where I think AI is going to ultimately be most useful. And so, if you rethink the process of, hey, we should actually be focused on doing all of this work up here. So ultimately, you're not scaling to 100,000 messages a month. You are trying to scale down to 1,000 messages a month to the perfect people. That's the process that's going to work. And ultimately, where I think AI sales tech as a whole should be going.
I have conversations with a lot of people that own AI SDR businesses. It's a very big thing right now. I think the real difference I'm seeing in what you do is that it doesn't seem like sheer outbound. It seems like you're more the gap between inbound and outbound, right? As like you're already you're basing it on intent, the signals that are already there. My question for you is like, why do you think Valley's been so successful so far? Like my kind of immediate thought would go to the kind of creator economy we're in, that people are more producing more top of funnel content, thus there's more signals kind of coming in. It's easier to capture that intent. Like, have you got any kind of thoughts on this in general?
Well, to your first point, yes, I think that Valley does sit in the intersection, or like where we're moving is really to try to sit in the intersection of inbound and outbound. But ultimately, I think it's one of the same, right? Outbound as a whole is moving that direction, right? These two sort of circles are going to become concentric circles, or as much as they possibly can be. It's like, yes, you got your 2% that actually submit the demo request, but then all of your outbound targets should exist really closely to that pocket, right? Really close to the people who are already aware of you. And so I would say, look, we're still an outbound tool. We're just following the riding the wave of where outbound is going, which is it wants to be neighbors with inbound if you want to do it right. Um, Now, why do I think we've been successful so far? I think two reasons. One is sort of the right market at the right time, right? All of these transitions were happening all at once. We were able to capture that wave early, and we're still riding that wave. So that's sort of piece one. Obviously, I think there's some saying it's like sort of you can have an sort of average idea or average team or average everything, but if you're in the right market, you're going to do much better than a incredible team with incredible product in the wrong market. Now, by all means, I think we have an incredible team and we're in an incredible market, but really just saying if the market is ultimately going to be what decides if your startup wins or loses. So that's one. Two is going to be we started with LinkedIn versus email. I think email was just incredibly crowded. We saw a lot of writing on the wall around sort of it getting a lot harder to get into inboxes, or on the infrastructure getting a lot more important and expensive. Um, Domains being harder to warm, email sending and spam. We were like, all right, everybody else is trying to run to go and do that side of thing. Let's start with LinkedIn, which is where I had my experience, but also is what we think to be the most performant um, outbound channel today and moving forward. And then three, because we figured out this thesis pretty early of uh, you really should be focusing on the who, and if you can get the who right, then the what becomes a lot easier. So get the right targets, find the right people, and couple that with incredible research and incredible messaging, because just that alone is not going to drive the top of funnel improvements, so really the bottom of funnel improvements that you want to see.
How pertinent is timescale to you? Because I see a lot of companies popping up, and especially with like the rise of AI agents, people are kind of pretty much saying, "Oh, we've got a 2 year window before Salesforce comes out, and they've got their own kind of option for this, and they just entirely capture that market." How does that kind of phase into your development and how rapidly you're developing the product and capturing that market?
Yeah, it sort of goes back to one of my favorite sayings. I can't remember, Alex Rampell at Andreessen Horowitz, right? Can the incumbent acquire the innovation before the startup can acquire the distribution? That's the core of it. And so it's when you think about time window, you're thinking about, okay, you've got Goliath organizations like Outreach, Salesforce, Salesloft, you name it, who have been sort of the omnipresent forces in this past era of sales tech. How long will it take them to acquire the innovation and actually ship something that can do exactly what we're saying? Because I think the thesis is directionally correct. That is what the world is moving towards. It's what sort of all our sales leader advisors have talked to us about. And we have deep conviction on that. Um, can they go build out products before we can go acquire distribution? Um, and so, look, at the end of the day, I wouldn't be here if I didn't think that we could go and do that. So, time window wise, I would say you've got like you can't really put a finger on it. You can say 2, 3, 5 years. I think 3 years ago, we have no idea that we're here today technologically. Um, so, anyways, can't really give you a time window, but for us, it's we're obviously working as hard as we possibly can on building the best product possible, and my job is just distribution, distribution, distribution. And so far, that's been panning out quite well.
Let's take a step back for a second. You touched on it briefly earlier on that you had exited 2 companies prior to this, and kind of described a little bit about how you kind of came to where you are today. But I'd love to hear about the founding thesis or the genesis behind Valley in general. Like, why start this business in the first place? What was it that was important to you? What was the idea?
I think I realized the whole service as a software idea before anyone sort of named it service as a software. Um, because it seemed pretty intuitive, right? It was like I serendipitously fell into my first business. I was scrolling through Snapchat. I saw this like dark screen with one line on it that said, "Hey, I'm looking to start a company. Does anyone want to do it with me?" I was in the middle of studying for ACTs, which I did not want to do. And so I swiped up and said, "Sure, let's do it." Jumped into the service company with this by the previous co-founder Zane, um, and we were setting appointments for financial advisors. We were using Zopto, which is like again a basic sort of LinkedIn automation tool. Great tool, by the way. And then sort of a human layer on top. And the humans on top would manage finding the right people and generating the right messaging, handling all the responses, notifying the customer that somebody wants to meet with them. And so it was third party tech plus humans. Pure service play, right? All we did was sort of operationalize those two things. Then that business was acquired, then started a company called Fish, which ultimately I handed over the reins to Zane to go and run. And he was the one who's actually should be credited with the ultimate exit. I kept a little percentage of the company. But started that company Fish, and it was the same process: third party tech and humans. And then you got the advent of AI and LLMs, and you could realize, okay, the foundational pieces of what humans were doing in those prior two businesses was finding the right people, generating the right message, handling the responses, and notifying the client if somebody was interested in meeting with them. With overnight, all of that suddenly became possible to do with technology. So the easy bit was saying, all right, let's go build this sort of foundational automation infrastructure and sort of start consolidating outbound tooling, and then build a layer on top that can orchestrate all of this tooling and find the right people, generate the right message, send them out, manage responses, let them customer know if somebody's ready for a booked meeting. And so technology could color in all the gaps that humans were previously coloring in for me. Now, obviously, I think that we all started quickly realize that transformation of when humans can do that is actually going to take longer than we thought. It wasn't possible with 3.5. It became a bit more possible with 4. Now with O1 being introduced, there's a lot more that could happen. Um, but yeah, that was the sort of the logical path of why I thought, holy shit, like, I got to go start this company. And I realized for me, the most qualified founder to go and do it, just because I was intimately familiar with the services side, right? In a service as a software um, transformation, I think the service experience is really important. Now, sort of other founders have come at it from a purely technological background. Maybe they were an SDR or a sales leader at a big tech company. But I think that uniquely, sort of having the service experience has been very helpful as we've gone through product dev and selling and go to market, etc.
How did you settle on the name Valley? And talk to me a little bit about the branding, because it's maybe one of the best websites I've seen ever in my entire life. And I don't say that lightly. I've never said that to anyone in the podcast before, but I am obsessed with the design on it.
Oh, thank you. I gotta go tell my designers that. All right, so the name Valley, that was just purely stubborn. So in between these two agencies and this product Valley, there was another Valley. And initially, what I wanted to go and do after building the agencies was build this social network for founders and investors. Um, I was seeing that a lot of fundraising and connecting with investors and sort of startups pitching was happening on Twitter. And I was like, okay, what if you can build a derivative of tech Twitter or Twitter that's just focused on the tech industry, and you build tooling on top of this social feed? to pitch your startup, to invite investors into your round, to sort of formalize safes, etc. And so the feed would be these bite-sized investor updates, right? So it's a way that you can communicate with your current pool of advisors, angels, investors. And then you also had this like micro pitch, which was like a Tinder style sort of investors can swipe left are the ones they don't want and right are the ones that they're interested in. So, anyways, I needed that valley because I was like, okay, that's a digital Silicon Valley. That was really interesting. And then I was like, hold on, this isn't working for a number of different reasons, which I'm happy to get into. But it was just the business didn't work, and I fundamentally think it's going to be really challenging for someone to solve that problem. But I said, like, I am not going through the whole rigmarole of reincorporating and doing new names. So whatever I decide to land on next is going to be named Pally. Um, and then ultimately it worked out, right? Like it's not a traditional sales tech sort of name like Outreach or Sales Loft. It's got sort of like this other feels like it's other thing over here. And then with the branding, I think the differentiated brands are sort of they're under they're undervalued. It's the emotion that a prospect has when they come to your website versus another. Um, I think is one of the biggest ways that you can differentiate yourself past obviously the product and the features. You want your prospect to feel something different, especially if you're trying to put yourself in a different frame compared to a lot of tools that have come before us. So one of the things that I was clear on at the start was that a lot of people would try to compare us to traditional sales enablement technology, right? Sales enablement tools that are $50 a month or $70 a month. And here we are at $849 a month. And so both through the copy of the website and the product and like the way that we explained the tool, we wanted to make sure that it was clear that, hey, we're not sales enablement, we're sales execution. We actually do this workflow for you. With sales enablement, you need to buy a piece of technology and you need humans to get the outcome you want. Value is just going to give you the outcome. But there are also other ways that you can convey that through a differentiated brand. So our website doesn't look like any of the sales enablement tools. Our name isn't like a sales enablement tool. The colors and gradients and all this stuff is completely different. So, anyways, that was the genesis of the brand, and then handed those ideas to our designers, and then they came up with the stunning site that we have today.
Just a real quick interruption to the podcast. I just wanted to let you know about our free daily newsletter. We've been doing this for around a year and a half now. We sent to an audience of 400,000 subscribers with readers from the likes of OpenAI, Microsoft, Apple, NASA, and many more organizations like that. All it is a daily digest of everything that's happening in AI, plus tools that you can use, plus automations that you can employ today to save time and earn more money, and everything that's happening in AI in general. So if you want to stay up to date with AI on a daily basis, just subscribe to our newsletter down below. Yeah, I love it. It kind of reminds me of OpenAI's as well, especially the way you've got your about page set up with the different kind of thumbnails for the articles that you're writing and stuff as well. Like it's very different to what I've seen out there as well. And I love the kind of difference that you demarcated there as well, that it's not just a sales enablement, it's sales execution. And I think it really comes across in the quality of it. And I assume that you had such an importance and such a focus on this in terms of the idea of framing because you had that past experience in this exact industry in the past as well, right? So framing is important to you.
100%. And also, I would be lying if I had said we didn't look at OpenAI's website for some inspiration. So, yeah, there is definitely going to be places where we pulled inspo from.
Does that overlap into your personal life as well in terms of how you dress? This is just a random question. You just got the AirPod Maxes on, you've got the hat on, you're looking very fresh. Like, is that something that you carry into your everyday life as well in terms of framing? Like, is that important?
It's a really interesting question. I never really thought about that, to be honest. Yeah, I think so. I think that a company ultimately is not just a product. A company is the people. Number one, two is the product, and then it's this whole sort of culmination of perception. Ultimately, you're buying off of what you perceive the product, the team, the company to do. So yeah, I do think that framing is really important. I talk about framing a lot when it comes to sort of productive discussions, and it's like if you can unify a frame, you can have a really productive discussion. But anyways, yes, I do think that framing in all aspects of the company, and perception matters, right? Perception is brand, brand is awareness. Awareness will lead to uh, a lot for your business to top of funnel and referrals and word of mouth and these types of podcasts. So, yes, interesting question. Never thought about that before.
Thank you. That's the greatest compliment to someone that does podcasts. When someone says an interesting question, it's Jay's like a hat crack or something, straight to the vein. So that's awesome to hear. In terms of pricing, I'd love to jump into the numbers. I'm not sure how much you can reveal. I know that your pricing starts at, I think, like A49, goes up from there and scales further. Talk to me one about like the pricing, why you kind of settled on what you currently have, and maybe if you can jump into the numbers in terms of how much you've grown, how much you've raised, stuff like that. I'd love to hear as much as you can reveal about the financials.
Yeah, I think high level. So we raised it's like 3.1, 3.2 in pre-seed funding. Revenue grew 5x from lab, I guess from 23 to 24. And now we want to do that again. So that's those are the targets we set for 2025. In terms of the pricing, pricing is interesting, right? The initial price that I set was and use a very basic model for like our first pricing model, which was about $500 a month. Um, and it was they do customer interviews and then keep raising the price by $100 a month until over 50% of your calls in a given week say no, and then go back to whatever that previous sort of number was. That was $500 a month, and it seemed like a lot of our competitors kind of stuck around that number too. So directionally, I don't know, maybe they had much more comprehensive ways of finding that number, but we all landed around the same thing. And then 849, so when we launched our V3, where we added in website intent, we added in this sort of 13-step message generation flow and the research agents and a whole horde of new pieces to the product. Um, that is sort of why we had to increase the pricing a bit because our margins got squeezed on because we spend probably I think we spend more than anybody when it comes to message generation because we really want to be the leader in hyper performant messaging. Because a lot of people say that AI messaging is generic and it sounds weird, and we wanted to differentiate ourselves through saying, look, we are going to invest everything we can into building the best messaging system possible. Um, so that's why we increased pricing a bit. Now, ultimately, like steep peek into the future, we're going to have a much cheaper option that's going to be sort of potentially more of a self-serve trial, sort of explore valley avenue in the past or in the future, and then we're also going to have a much more expensive version. So one of the big insights from 2024 was that this $500 to $1,000 a month price, I think makes sense if you sort of work bottom up from what makes sense for the business and how to sell it based on your cost structure. But it is no man's land because you can't really go bottoms up. SDRs and AEs can't afford anything between there, and they're not going to sort of take the risk to put their credit card in to try something at that price. Um, and then top down, it's like it just the pricing structure for a go to market motion doesn't really make sense. You either want to be a 50K a year piece of software, or you want to be able to give somebody something to test out and try, build adoption from the underlying team. So all the SDRs, the AEs, that then forces the hand of their SDR leader or their manager or the CRO to ultimately buy a company by deal. It's like how Slack grew, a number of these bottoms up companies grew. So that's ultimately what we're going to do: enterprise plans, and then much more startup plans.
I love it. I think if anyone's listening to the podcast now, they got a pretty good understanding of your story so far, how the business works, how it operates, how it generates revenue. One last question I've got before I want to jump into some personal questions for you is, where do you really see this going? Usually I ask, where do you see this in a 3, 5, 10-year timeline? Maybe that timeline's condensed. Like, is the goal ultimately for an exit? Is the goal ultimately to capture and establish yourself as part of the market? I don't know how much you can reveal again, but I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I think that ultimately the goal is to build this sort of outbound operating system for modern sales teams and to be an established name as a business that helps build other businesses, right? I think outbound is will always be one of the most predictable and repeatable channels to go and grow your business. Um, and I think it's a really just it's an empowering mission to think that you're building sort of this system that can go and help hundreds of thousands, and potentially millions of companies go and build their own businesses, become their own entrepreneurs, hire their own employees, and build their own little ecosystem. So ultimately, that's what I want to go do. I don't know if that's going to take me 1 year or 10 years, but I won't stop until we get there. Um, in terms of where we see sort of vision going, I was alluded to this earlier, but I think the largest opportunity for AI SDRs is to couple Um, this idea of autonomous pipeline generation with consolidation of first, second, and third party intent signals. And once you build a system that can do those things, right? Consolidate the intent piece, consolidate the outbound tooling piece, you then go and build what I like to think of as like a system of intelligence or go to market brain, right? We've had system of records for the past decade. What does a system of action, a system of intelligence, or again, go to market brain look like? Um, and ultimately, it's something that can set itself up, right? It can communicate the action that's going to take versus taking in inputs, right? Um, for example, you input your company website. We then look at what's worked for other companies that are in a similar industry, selling to similar customers, and we tell you these are the intent signals that you're going to want to look for. These are the personas that you're going to want to go after. Here's the messaging style that you're going to want to use. Here are the medians that you're going to send messages on. If all of this looks good, click go, and we set up this entire thing for you where we understand how to capture the right people, generate the right message, and send that message at the right time. So like this idea of revenue in a box. Um, so yeah, that's where we ultimately want to go when I think about this operating system or operating engine for the modern sales team.
Revenue in a box sounds like a fucking great box.
So that's a box I want.
Definitely, someone wants to deliver that box. Feel free. We had a conversation before. You're 22 right now, right? How did it feel to raise over $3 million at such a young age? Like, you have a background in this sort of industry. How did you grow into it? Like, what was your upbringing like? Was that not just insane?
It was it's a good question. Uh, I would dream about that. Sort of when after starting the first business, that's when I got into venture capital and learned about this whole world of tech. And um, yeah, I'd stay up late at night, like staring at the wall, dreaming of that moment. Like, what would that feel like? What would it be like? I want so desperately to get there. Um, it was an amazing feeling. It was an amazing feeling for, like, the first 1 or 2 days, and then it was like, "Holy fuck." Like, there's shit. Like, how on earth am I doing this? How am I in this position? What am I supposed to go do next? I've got, like, all these people counting on me. I felt like the pressure of the faith and belief of and, like, sincere humility to the fact of somebody and this somebody actually was Jeff Becker, it's a general partner at Antler, who was like, I believe in this kid and we're going to go invest in him. He said specifically, this was when I was doing my previous social media sort of Silicon Valley thing. He said, Zayd, I hate this idea. This business idea sucks, but we're going to invest in you anyways because we believe that you're going to find something here or ultimately go and pivot and build something incredible. And this was on the back of sort of talking to 150 investors who all said no. And so he wrote the first check. Then we compounded some additional checks. And so anyways, to answer your question, it was excitement, it was elation, it was wow, I have this shot. Um, and then it was, oh my God, I have this shot, right? It's like I can't fuck it up. I can't screw it up. Um, investors count on me, people count on me. Like you've got careers in your hands. You've got a lot of investor money in your hands. And you also have like your own sort of self-belief and sort of I guess ego in your own hands and saying, look, I have so much conviction on this opportunity. My greatest fear would be to not live up and fulfill the opportunity that I've found my way in, or found my way to. So yeah, two sides of a really interesting coin. A lot of happiness, a lot of pressure, and then a lot of just gratitude and humility to be in the seat.
How has that pressure changed you? How has it molded you? Maybe how has it matured you? How's your personality changed because of it?
It's interesting because growing up, like I was never really stressed out by anything. Yeah, it's an overstatement. There are probably things that stress me out, but like if I'm sure if you talk to my parents, they would say like I was not the guy who was stressed out studying for a test. Like I would always be the person at 9 p.m. Even if I studied for an hour, I'd be like, you know what? The doctors say get your 8 hours. I should probably just go to bed and have a workout. So yeah, we're just like go to sleep and take the test and hope for the best. And um, I think I just had faith, like I'd be able to figure it out, and there are going to be a lot of ups and downs, and I think I was able to build that sort of comfort in turbulence really early. Like I would get a bad grade, and somehow like things would ultimately work out. I'd figure them out, and I wouldn't be emotionally attached to these terrible outcomes or these amazing outcomes. I was able to stay pretty level. So I think that was sort of clear early on, as I was going through school. And I think that's helped me in building Valley because it really is a world of ups and downs. for employees who join the team, like I have to have a conversation with them and say, look, if you haven't worked at a startup before, the sine wave of emotions you're going to feel is going to be wildly more intense than anything else that you felt. So the amplitude of like that wave is wildly different. But if you zoom out and keep zooming out, ultimately the amplitudes levels out to just up until the right line. And like I really want to encourage you to do that. So I think that ultimately the pressure has helped me realize, number one, realize that, and two, work on myself to refine the comfort in turbulence. Um, Hopefully that answers the question. But I will also add, I just want to add to that, like I'm absolutely not impenetrable to it. Um, it 100% gets to me. It 100% gets to, I think, all my founder friends and sort of founders of my network. Um, they may not show it, they may not talk about it, they may not be wildly open about the fact that like it is a lot of pressure and a lot of stress, and then you feel um, again, an unbelievable amount of a responsibility. So, I think all of us are working towards that end state of like making sure that we can be level headed and confident and energetic and a positive energy for the team that the team can feed off of. But I can promise you, when the lights of the office go off and you head home, it's you definitely feel it, and sometimes you just got to sit with it, right? You can't push it away, you can't push it down. Um, so it definitely is, it definitely exists. It's definitely something that you'll deal with daily. Um, but ultimately, it's something you chip away at so every day, and you're forced to, right? If you want to show up for the team, you're forced to figure out how to deal with that. So, uh, I would think that the situation that I'm in the company for helping me figure out how to operate with the turbulence.
Talk to me about that on a practical level. You obviously have an amazing group of people that are behind you, supporting you, the kind of investor stuff like that. It sounds as if you've got some mentors as well, and you probably get a lot of practical advice. But I'm curious to hear from you. Do you meditate? Do you exercise a lot? Do you drink alcohol? Do you take nootropics? Is there supplements? Like, talk to me on a practical level how you kind of deal with these stresses to make sure you're kind of as competent as possible when you come to work.
Yeah, great question, and it's all of the above what you just said. Like so let's see. Start off. One of my intentions for this year is to meditate more. I did very sporadically last year, but I'm now making more of a habit of it. So I will meditate. Like right now, it's like 5 minutes in the morning. That's it, and trying to add a minute every week. And then exercise. So we'll be in the gym before work, and so I'll tell myself 5 days a week I got to do a cardio workout at one point in the day, and then a lifting workout at one point in the day. So whichever. If I wake up late, then we'll do cardio in the morning. If I got some more time, then I'll go to the gym. Sometimes we'll flip flop after or before work. But yeah, exercise has been a huge thing for me. If I don't, I was sick this last week, and it's definitely sort of messed with my mentals. Um, so exercise, we'll drink sporadically on the weekends, happy hours with the team, but obviously not a crutch. And then um, let's see. And then nootropics. I've got a crazy nootropic stack, which I don't know if it actually works. Maybe it's more placebo, but it definitely helps me to have this routine in the morning where I can wake up. We'll sort of do some workout fasted, come back, have a protein bar. Huge fan of David bars, by the way. They're awesome. 28 grams of protein, 150 calories. Fantastic. Can't find anywhere else. Um, Anyways, not sponsored by them. I love them. They should sponsor me. Um, so yeah, we'll come back on protein bar, and then I've got like like the longevity mix that I'll take. It's like a mixture of like L-theanine and a bunch of stuff. Um, and then oh man, Pro Mix has like this flow state mix. So I'll take that, collagen, creatine, um, and then yeah, we'll then head to work. So like that's generally the morning routine. So ultimately, it's like the ritual of having that slow morning is really nice. Uh, Gets me in the right headspace. I don't know if the fact that I have the routine or whatever they're putting in these supplements. Either or, it works.
I love it. I'm a huge fan of RX bars. I spend a decent amount of time in the US, and it's the only anytime I get there, it's like I think it's chocolate and salt, chocolate and sea salt. I'm obsessed with it.
Dude, I cannot get myself to eat those. I find that I don't know. I feel like I'm like trapped when I'm eating them. I take one bite and it's like, it's like fuck. But
Is
now
it
I
the
have to deal with the
texture?
rest. Yeah, I think it is. I think it is.
Yeah,
It's like God, now
I
I'm
love the
responsible for this
texture.
bar. I need to eat the whole thing, and I like.
I love it. I'm part of an obsessive group about it. I've got a friend called Lewis who introduced me to them as well. He's in tech, and he was telling me this funny story about how he's at the airport and he saw a guy in front of him eating an RX bar. So he starts talking to him about RX bars, and then another guy from across the room notices the conversation, joins in, starts talking about RX bars, and then this woman comes over. She's like eating RX bars, starts joining in the conversation about RX. So it's just this airport line of people obsessed about
There's
RX
more and more people
bars.
just congregating. That's fantastic. It's like a magnet.
I love it. Right, I get three questions for you to finish off. What time do you wake up at?
6:30.
Why New York?
Why not New York? I was like, New York is everything. Uh, I think a couple reasons. Like, one, investors here, companies here. It's really they're could immediately limit sort of my where I want to live to two cities, New York or San Francisco. Um, and so actually, it's a pretty simple answer. It's like those are the two cities. My family is East Coast, so my parents are in DC. My sister's in New York. Wanted to be close to family. Um, and then sort of the cherries on top. There's always stuff to do. Tons of friends here. Um, so yeah, was a very simple decision. Two options: where's family, where are friends, where's a place where I can have like an interesting, balanced lifestyle. And so it's New York.
I'm going to provide no further context on this last question, and I ask this to everyone as well. Why do you do what you do?
There's nothing else I would rather do. There's nothing else I can see myself doing. Um, it was never like I was never looking at different options of what to do. It's like it was kind of this tunnel vision singularity of what else am I supposed to do, right? This is probably the number one, the one thing I'm qualified to do. Um, and two, it's like I don't think I would be successful in any other role. I don't think I'd be successful in a job. I don't think it would be. Um, I need to be moving. I need to be thinking. I need to be creative. Um, Yeah, but super simple answer. There's why do I do what I do? There's nothing else for me to do. I feel like it was since I was a kid, I was always trying to be an entrepreneur in any way, shape, or form. The classic lemonade stands, the car washes, the dog walking. Um, I had this little toy truck in my grandparents' house, like this little Hess truck, and I would go and take fruit from the fruit bowl, put it in this truck, and I'd like drive it around to my family members and force them to buy the fruit from me, and so it'd make like $3 and visit to the grandparents' house. Um, and then started this nonprofit in middle school, high school. Then started this. It's the only thing I'm here to do. Um, so that's the easiest way for me to answer the question. It's gratifying. It's a lot, but it's beautiful and fun and fulfilling. I feel grateful that I can say all those things about the things that I do.
Sid, I appreciate you. Thank you for your time.